Hey everyone, Victoria Valentine here. I have a much bigger video coming out. I don't even know when. I'm still in the process of scripting it. But recently, PirateSoftware released Stop Killing Games 2. And I watched the video, and I agree with a lot of Thor's general ideology involving the gaming industry. Hey, I'm a guy with 100 subscribers and no games to date. Working on it. No games to date. Take my opinion as you will. He is PirateSoftware, with a bunch of general accolades, a long history in the gaming industry, and truly a lot of reason to take his opinion seriously. Take his opinion as you will. My issue with a lot of Thor's stances here is that it's very, very anti-consumer. I see where he comes from, and I'm glad he can be a voice for developers, but I think there's just things that need to be discussed. Note, I wrote half the script before checking out the initiative, specifically because my issue was about Thor's comments and responses, and not about whatever the initiative said. Then I looked at the initiative, expecting to skim a 10-page legal document. No, unless I'm missing a lot of it, it's just this. Meaning any comment about not acknowledging the initiative doesn't matter, there's barely anything here. Knowing this, my issue with Thor's comments heightened, but that'll be apparent as we go through the video. I'll be showing a small clip with the full clip as a timestamp in the corner that I'll be referring to. My response is to the full length of the timestamp, not the clip that I will show, which will not provide full context.
Under this initiative, you would have to release the server binaries or keep the game in a functional playable state at end of life. So I hit you with a ton of bots. I hit you with a ton of exploits. I attack your community. I destroy your Reddit. I go after your business.
I think my key issue with this point isn't about validity, because I think his concerns are valid. I think it's an apparent thing. He's been in the industry. He would certainly know if this is a real thing that happens. I'm not going to challenge that. But I think it's about philosophy, because I can make this exact same point, but twist it in a positive light. So let's talk about the games that have died. Hyperscape, Rumbleverse. If server binaries were provided, which, also to be entirely transparent, don't know what that's referring to, so I'll speak more generally. If the ability to play these games after end-of-life care, rather than just it shutting down with no ability to access it, we do not need to rely on a corporation that is just fishing for Battle Royale love and affection to shut shit down on us. But I don't want this to be a good or bad argument. I could talk about the many good things, he could talk about the many bad things. It can be made across either spectrum. Thor's view, from what I interpret from this section of the video, is preferring a game dead over monetized by the wrong people. Zero issue with that. I do not frame that as a bad thing. So many of these kinds of videos are like, this guy is wrong. I think this is just a philosophical difference. In my view, I'd rather risk that those few players that can access it and want to make a server, even if it's monetized just to keep the server going, I think that's worth it. I'd rather them have the access to it. Zero issue with that. It's just a philosophical difference. I don't see anything wrong with his stance on that.
Talking to people about it, this specific scenario on both YouTube and Discord and Reddit and a bunch of other locations, I got a couple of takes back. We're going to start with the most extreme position and kind of go from there. So, in the most extreme, people said live service games shouldn't exist at all, and the initiative will kill them off for good, and that's a good thing.
First, I don't even really think the extreme take is worth mentioning myself. That's the sort of fan who sees a change in something they love, the feedback is bad towards it, and they're like, finally, they'll go back to making the good shit I love instead of whatever the hell they were doing. It's cringe, it's a bad opinion, and it's wrong. But he chose to respond to it, and his response is also strange, so let's let the clip continue.
Well, you don't get to define what players get to play or not play. You also shouldn't be able to get to define what developers build or don't build. You should not have creative control over the developers.
Thor, people would still make live service games. His next comments will get a lot more into that. And in fact, those games would need to be made much more carefully than they are now, due to this idea of needing to give access to functionality after a game dies. Companies would have to strategize how to best maneuver that, or more likely how to ignore it. To give an example of this sort of thing, it's like writing a historically accurate fiction novel within the 1800s, rooted and raised in slavery. It would not be historically accurate to not use the slurs of that era, as uncomfortable as that would be to write for most people, but you can also simply choose to not write that story, or alter the story to where it isn't applicable in that way. And to translate that to the live service talk, you can either make a game that wouldn't qualify as live service, you could just not make a live service game. Borderlands could have been a live service title. Effectively, that's what Destiny 2 is. You could just not do it that way. And if you want to do it that way, you could do things that either make it not applicable under the live service banner in these problematic ways, like it would need to fall under this clause. I think even in the initiative, it said single player or entirely free games, or maybe it was single player entirely free games, are like exempt from some of these rules. So that's all I'm saying. There's ways of getting around this.
The initiative does not purport to kill live service games. It would just make it incredibly difficult to build said games and add a lot of risk to it, which is why I'm bringing all of this up and why I don't support the initiative in the first place. A lot of people don't realize that this will slowly diminish live service games in the market.
So you're saying that legal provisions that all it is asking for people to do is to provide ways to play after primary support ends would diminish a market? If that market is dominated by the big companies, good. Stop puppeteering studios into making live service games either for them to shut down after less than a year or run themselves into the grave. I don't know what he's fighting for here. There's no issues in companies requiring to be a bit more careful. And I'm just realizing that maybe Thor's definition of a live service game is hopefully not the same as mine. But he quotes League and Final Fantasy XIV, two games that truly might never die. I don't know why this is such a bother for him.
Which means you get less multiplayer live experiences. That sucks. I like live service games. I enjoy playing things like Final Fantasy XIV. I enjoy going and playing in games in the past, at least, like League of Legends.
Okay, I won't say he's saying this, but I interpret his, you'll have less multiplayer live experiences. That sucks. As too personally biased by his love for these sorts of games. I don't think it's a fair position. I get less of these experiences, and that's bad. We've also had less military shooters since the COD phase of gaming has slowed down. One day, we'll have far less extraction shooters. Arena shooters haven't had a resurgence in a long time. Things come and go. I just visited a subreddit where the topic was about how MMOs aren't like how they used to be. Things change. I think we would still get live multiplayer experiences. And I don't think this would stop it. And if he's just saying, oh, making them have to do something so people can play the games after they go is going to make it so games suddenly die, I think he really hinges on the idea that people will be malicious. But it's also like, if we're talking about League or Final Fantasy XIV, it truly will not be enough to happen. Usually things change for poor reasons. At least this reason is consumer friendly. If companies are that unwilling to share their server data, they shouldn't be willing to pull this shit so much. It gets people to want to fight back when you frustrate them continuously. They just keep pulling games down and keep charging more and keep changing so much. Destiny 2, that whole incident with the final shape just happened, and that DLC went well. Lightfall went horrible, and they kept things going, and they planned the layoffs. And one day, Destiny 2 is not even going to be able to function anymore. It might even happen quicker than we think with the way that company is running. And we wouldn't want some sort of defense against that for such a game that people have invested hundreds of dollars into? Why don't we have the right to continue playing? I don't disagree with the point he makes near the end of the video about maybe they should just have a very clear, you're renting this game license. They'd never do it, though. Because they know people would see that and be like, oh, that sounds bad. Renting a game? I don't know if I want that. I don't care how good this is. I'm just renting it. If it's a subscription title, I think people are a lot more willing to understand that things are going to go someday. Because it's like, oh, if they don't make enough money, that's it. If you buy a game once, you assume that's yours. That's why the whole crew incident is crazy.
So the next one is that this is about games preservation, and that it needs to happen to preserve these types of games for future generations and for everyone to always have forever. But I would argue that this isn't actually preserving these games.
I'm going to pause right here. He's going to explain what he means. Hopefully you guys can tell good faith, the clip times and whatever. Preservation isn't a grade on how accurate it is to the original experience. It's pass-fail. Accuracy, as long as it is the original game, is all that counts. There's a video on YouTube about a guy soloing Final Fantasy XIV. That guy/player type can play that way with 0 servers. And for those that want to play with buddies, all you need is a goddamn peer-to-peer. It really isn't much. Let's let him continue, though.
There are a number of players to be in the match at the same time so that you can have an experience that is only able to be obtained through lots of players interacting. How many of you have felt negatively when an MMO dies? Or when a live service game dies? Oh, dead game. There's only 5 people online. Why would I play that? So why would you want to preserve a game in that state? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Fortunately, a lot of comments hit him against this point already, so that said, this is why I interrupted him with my explanation on preservation before he said what he said. Those watching his video may get taken away in the framing of, haven't you ever ignored a dead game? But that's not what preservation is about. It's not about loyalty to the height of that experience. It's allowing a version of that experience to forever be accessible. Even if it meant purchases, but if they don't want to do that, then okay, through servers. It's also assuming a game's identity is malleable. Let's say someone makes an MMO that no one plays. If that game dies and the servers are released to players, it's the exact same experience. So what you're really saying is, it won't match the expectation of the game in its better days. Which, to repeat, isn't what preservation is about. It's about it being there, like it or not. And I don't think we would have gotten to this point if companies were acting a bit smarter and a bit more respectfully to consumers, because they've been pulling this kind of thing for a while, but it's in ways that I think most people could at least understand. Forza Horizon 4, there's all sorts of old racing games. Why are we just pulling them off now?
Many other developers aren't going to be able to speak on this. As I explained before, it's really easy to lose your job if you're working at a major studio and try to speak out of turn on something like this, especially with something people are so passionate about. Doesn't make any sense to stay quiet. And it also doesn't make any sense to wait until it's in a different form when I see that it has so many problems with the language as it is currently written.
Now, I'm going to be very positive about PirateSoftware for a bit to counteract my negativity. Anyone arguing he shouldn't be voicing his opinions is dead wrong. That's crazy. None of my arguments are meant to shut down his possible concerns. The only shutdowns I want is on the opinion of, if a game is dead, why preserve it? That's just very anti-consumer, and it's not going to garner any fanfare. Plus, who cares if people like the game or not? It's about, it should deserve to exist. It was made, it was an art form. Everything else, from good to bad, is preserved somehow. I don't know why this would be any different. It's not about if we want it or not. It's about it being there. He has the experience in the industry to know some shit, though, so let's not doubt him on that. I challenge his arguments as he had requested in the description. Fight the argument I am presenting. And I absolutely am. But I mean no malice to PirateSoftware. I love his strong push for indie developers. I love his collaboration with off-brand games. I love his knowledge to have the whole Heartbound OST able to be used as background music, as long as it's not a re-upload. He's a great man and has valid points to be heard from. I just don't think this video does any good. Maybe people riled him up too much. I'm not here to disrespect the guy. Anyone who is a fucking child. Don't just throw hate at a guy for disagreeing. Jesus Christ. Are we trying to have insightful conversations to which we get to the best possible conclusion? Or are we just talking for the sake of it? I'm only so empowered to make this video because I want my own 2 cents to be in the pot. Even if PirateSoftware is a significantly more valuable input and influence, I want to talk too. And I wouldn't want to get hate for this take. Just give me constructive criticism. If I say something like a bitch, get on me for it. I gotta watch my wording before I put out a video. But if all I'm doing is disagreeing with a guy you like, don't hit me with personal attacks. In conclusion, PirateSoftware give a very bad take. Or maybe it's a take skewed to knowledge I'm lacking. But all I have is this video. I hope he enjoys his time off. Yo, weird as fuck for harassing him. I don't expect him to see this or care, but no man, I may disagree significantly to your points. Seriously, once I actually looked at the initiative, I was like, this is what he's disagreeing with, and it hurts my soul, man. But I'm glad you're saying this because you feel you're doing the right thing. You're contributing to the conversation in the same way that I am. I'm trying to contribute to the conversation. I, of course, feel what I'm saying is right. All the respect to you. You've inspired me, and a good friend of mine. That's value. Hopefully I'll see you once I've made a game myself. Until then, please take this constructive criticism. Fuck all the people that were giving you shit. Much love to you, my brother. And I'll see you in the next one. It's going to be a JPEG Mafia video. That's all I'll say.